There's a woman called Julia Marchese.
Marchese, maybe.
Marchese, okay. She spent many years working at the New Beverly Cinema, which is a repertory cinema in Los Angeles. And, she spent years working there for, not much above minimum wage in L.A.
She begged for the job for 5 years. She begged for the job for 5 years.
She adored the cinema, and it was going to be her dream job, regardless of whether or not it paid her enough to live. But anyway, the theater almost failed. They're going to turn it into a Chipotle, and that's when Quentin Tarantino came in, I think about 2007, and kind of bought it and relieved the debt on it. And the controversy in the past couple of months has been that Tarantino, whatever happened, he brushed the son of the original owner out, maybe paid him off or something, and he said, "Look, I own the theater. Now I'm actually going to run it myself." And which is his right to do, I would imagine. So this woman was made finally co-manager of the place. So all of a sudden she jumped up to a $50,000 a year salary, and she started seeing things that she didn't like. Cameras being placed in the box office and projection booth and all over the place. And she tried to voice her opposition to a few of the moves being made and to Tarantino, and couldn't get to him. And I guess the person that Tarantino put in charge of the theater, his personal assistant, who doesn't have any kind of management background, thought that she was too much of a busybody and fired her. But not really fired her, just told her, you're going to work a day or so in the concession stand, but you can always quit if you want. And so, basically forcing her.
Yeah, she didn't even have the guts to fire her.
So she wrote a blog. You can read it as somebody sour because they were fired, like a disgruntled employee. But it's apparent in reading the blog that this was truly a place that she adored, and the culture that it cultivated is dying under the new management, in her opinion. She even spent the past couple of years making a movie about repertory houses, the whole culture of repertory cinema as it applies particularly to the New Beverly. It's like a love letter to the New Beverly. And so she said, well, I can't premiere this movie in the New Beverly anymore, so I'm going to make it available for free online. So I did watch that movie. Did you watch that movie too, Dean?
I did.
Okay. I haven't watched it yet. I just read the article Friday night.
I adored it. I thought it was great. I thought that it was it's definitely a fan film in a lot of ways, but it's got a different quality than most fan films because it's got more like, it's got honest heart and investment in it, like personal investment in it. So on that level, but anybody who's ever worked at a movie theater that was particularly like an independently owned theater, in town. I worked at the Plaza for 9 years, and this totally reminded me of the Plaza. I would work the concession stand and the box office and tear the tickets and do all that stuff, and then there'd be one guy doing the projectionist, and so I loved how it got into. Not only, it didn't just get into the running of the New Beverly, but it also got into the debate on watching movies projected on film, which we've talked about on this show, particularly with Aaron coming in. Aaron Aradias just did who's a great friend of ours, been on the show.
That's why I brought this up, because we're finally going to get into this now.
Yes, we're finally going to get into this, which I held my tongue.
I felt bad for her, though. I just felt bad.
Why? He read RogerEbert.com. He wrote an editorial that was posted on RogerEbert.com.
Hold on. Okay, so Aaron came on the show before he had done that article for Roger Ebert, and said, I think this was, anyway, he came on the show and said something about how there's no difference between digital and 35 millimeter and 35 millimeter, the offering of 35 millimeter to people nowadays just makes him. Well, this was his thrust in the article that he wrote. He said he made him feel like he was missing out on something. Well, dude, you are missing out. Like, okay, so that's my first thing. That's my first salvo on this whole thing. And second of all, like, don't call me a fanboy for preferring to watch things on film as opposed to digital. I will always prefer film over digital. I like the imperfections. I like the sense that I'm watching the physical remnant of something that has been shown in theaters across the nation, whatever print it might be. I like the sense that the print that I'm watching has a history. I like it that it's beat up a little bit. Maybe it is nostalgia. I'll give it that.
That's not Aaron's point, actually, because what you're talking about is something different from what he's talking about. And
no, I'm saying my thing. So illuminate.
So what he's talking about is movies, no matter what they're shot on, need to work the same way. People respond to movies because they empathize with story and character and that whole thing, the basics. And when you're talking about I miss the scratches and all that kind of stuff, that's fetishizing the actual form, and that has nothing to do with the actual film itself, the actual movie itself.
But when you're talking about going and watching movies that are established, loved movies, like when you're talking about, I'm going to see Deliverance and it's on 35. Well, we already know Deliverance is a movie that works on those levels. So why is there? I mean, if there's any movie that's being played at a repertory house for a certain segment of the audience,
repertory houses are different. But he was equating it. He was also equating it to Interstellar and people that have film projectors. The people that kept a film projector after this digital conversion was shoved down their throat for $20,000 are rewarded with two days advanced screenings of Interstellar, which is kind of like a FU to the people that had to make this conversion. But repertory houses. I will not go see an older movie at a theater if it's played with a Blu-ray, because I can do that at home. I can do that at home.
What's the point?
Yeah.
And AFI does that. The AFI Silver does that. I could not.
Honestly, the Plaza Theater does it here too. I mean,
I think it's disgusting.
It's wrong. It's like plainly wrong. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, but go ahead.
Guys.
Go ahead,
but
JD.
I will have to tell you that I don't really fall one way or another. I think that digital is here. You're fighting a losing battle. Because the future is already here.
It's cheaper to deliver.
But
so.
I will say, I mean, all the digital presentations I've seen are pretty flawless. But I'm not passionate one way or another about it, and that's why I'm not the one writing an editorial. See, when you write an editorial, you have to fall firmly on one side or another. It can't be hemming and hawing and saying, I don't know which one, So Aaron fell on the side of quit fetishizing film. That's not what's most important about movies. It's about story, and the story will not suffer if you shot on digital instead of film.
But here's what I have to say about it. Personally, I believe that our engagement in stories is greater watching something projected on film. And that is, I've said it on the show before, but in case you've missed it, 24 times a second. There is a picture and a picture and a picture, and it's projected 24 times a second. And it is our mind that creates the relationship between each one of those pictures. So there's a part of our brain that is working while watching film that keeps the brain engaged in a different way than it does with digital. Now, you can watch digital, you feel like you've seen the movie, you have seen the movie, you have experienced the story, but you perhaps have not been quite as engaged as you might have been. You're perhaps a little bit more distracted, and possibly that takes you out of a movie. That takes you out of the story. So that's what I'm saying. film, projecting something on film is not only as Julia said in the movie, it's not only like somehow more romantic and more interesting and yes, fetishistic. I suppose I will go for that. But,
nothing wrong with that.
But there is yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. But there's that thing of like your brain. It's something you can't put your finger on. You cannot say, oh, my brain was totally. It just is. It just is. It's when you're watching something on digital, that work, making those relationships between each separate picture, that work's done for you. It's very easy to get distracted during a movie at home, watching it on digital, watching it on television.
Every single advancement in film, be it color or sound, it was a step towards having movies parallel more accurately how we actually see the world, how we actually experience things. We experience things in color. We experience things with sound. And everybody thought that the world was fucking falling apart when those inventions came around. Now, I've heard that all of this 100 frames per second, whatever Trumbull's doing, it's more accurate to the way we actually experience the world.
But it's also not. I haven't seen these movies. I didn't even go see. Well, I stepped in the theater for the 48 frame per second Lord of the Rings, but it's also disconcertingly real. Okay, there is a thing about. Of course, we've talked about this in just the intrinsic nature of movies. We've talked about like, yes, it's real, but is it interesting? Okay, so let's just talk about this in terms of the look of movies. Okay. It looks real, but does it create sort of a feeling of a general feeling of newness? I don't think so. I think that it's disconcertingly real for people. I think that people really do require a certain veneer, a certain sort of diaphanous kind of curtain that's placed in front of the screen, if you will, that says this is the real world. This is the real world, and this is the fake world. Okay, go ahead.
I understand what you're saying. I do. Go ahead, Jerry.
I need to chime in on this because this is something that's very important to me, and it actually goes back to something Dean was talking about when he was going over independent films for the Massachusetts Independent Film Festival. We'll get to that in a second. But okay, so a couple weeks ago, Eduardo Sanchez had his new movie Exist was going to be at the AFI Silver, and that was going to show in a DCP presentation, which is good. I mean, that's where you see in movie theaters. But then there was another local movie that was going to show on a Blu-ray. Who the hell wants to go to a movie theater and watch a Blu-ray? I'm sorry, I have a lot of problems with that, but it even goes back further to my childhood, the difference between film and when you were a kid and you were flipping through the channels because we didn't have a flipper back then, this was in the 70s, and you watch a soap opera. And soap operas look horrible. Soap operas look like, they're TV. I mean, they're really TV. They look awful. And then this brings me back to when there was a movie that came out in 2000 called Third World Cop, which was shot on video but was showing at film festivals, and critics were complaining of the look of the film because they're like, my God, it's shot on video. It just looks like I'm watching like a soap opera almost, And this is very important to bring up because you want people to come to the theater to have a great experience, but to make them feel like they're watching a movie. If I'm watching something that looks like a video, that's not good. That's not good. That's awful. That will make people stay home quicker than you can imagine.
Do you
it's okay at a film festival or something, but yeah.
Do you feel like you're watching a video when you watch a Michael Mann film or a David Fincher film? Or we're shooting it in digital form.
No. I mean,
they look good though.
Okay, so shooting on we're talking specifically about the projection of the movie. That's the way I like to frame it. We're not talking about the making of the movie. The movie can be filmed on digital or film. I personally prefer film. I like the grain of it. But and sometimes I watch a movie that's shot on digital that looks, especially when I watch it at home on a Blu-ray or whatever, that looks ridiculously like it's shot on video. So I don't like that.
Yeah, that is a problem. That is a problem. Now, no, you're right. A Michael Mann or a David Fincher film does not look like that.
They don't do that.
The worst thing to do when you go to a movie theater is you see the actual computer screen on the screen. And it gives the projection. I hate that. That
is such a no-no to let people just please give us some kind of illusion that we're actually watching a film as opposed to watching a file on your fucking computer. Please.
Yeah, because if I'm doing that, hey, I can go home and torrent this motherfucker. I mean,
I'll stay at home. I got a big screen at home. I'll stay at home. Why do I have to pay you $8, $10, whatever it is?
Everything about movies is, I mean, here's from the theatrical exhibition viewpoint. They're trying to increase people going to the movies. So they're inventing stuff like the D-Box, where you sit in a specific chair for a higher surcharge, and it shakes during the movie, and it sprays water at you and all that kind of crap.
That's stupid.
They're trying to make movies like a roller coaster and most of the big movies every year are like theme parks. So actually making the film at 100 frames per second or whatever Trumbull wants to do is conducive to doing that. But I've never had a problem with any of the digital presentations I've seen of any new movie. But an old movie, if I go out of the house to watch an old movie, I would prefer it to be a 35 millimeter print because I can watch it crisper and cleaner at home on my own Blu-ray.
Right.
I just don't see. Look, Paul Thomas Anderson at the Inherent Vice screening. An interesting thing that happened was that we were told that it was going to be a 35 millimeter print and everything. And after the screening, he said, "I feel like a fraud because this wasn't the 35 millimeter print. The print's actually going to be shown at Alice Tully. What you saw here was the DCP." And I, contrary to what Aaron might think, for instance, I could tell that it wasn't film because it didn't have those film things in it. It didn't have that change of reel. It didn't have the cigarette burns. If you don't see the cigarette burns right before a change of reel, a reel is 20 minutes long. If you don't see the cigarette burns before a change of the reel, because they need to be there in order to tell the people in the projection booth how to build the print. If you don't see those cigarette burns, you're not watching film. That's basically it. I could tell. Now, but what Paul Thomas Anderson said at the end of the press conference was really great. He said, "I just don't see why we can't have both."
Because it's not practical. Because you can't afford it.
Why? There's 20.
Why can't you afford both a film projector and a digital projector side by side?
We got theaters with 20 screens. Why can't there be 2 screens devoted to 35 millimeter? At least occasionally, they can have a projector there. It would be something. Look, it's a market. People want it. Why not fill it? We're a fucking country of choices. We can buy the fat-free yogurt or the yogurt that's filled with sugar. Why can't we have a 35 millimeter print of something?
Because frankly, the only people that want it are the few of us that are like you that are clamoring for it. I mean, the general masses you don't have two 35 millimeter projectors because they don't make film prints anymore.
But they should keep making film prints. That's the point. They should keep making film prints. They should keep and Julia's movie talks about this too. Out of Print is the name of her movie, by the way. Out of Print. Out of Print talks about this. Talks about yes, we know that it's difficult and everything, but it's going the extra mile. It's showing showing a historical document. And by the way, it's much easier to on a film preservation level. Of course, this is the other part of the debate. film is always going to be there. It's always going to work. It doesn't change. But here we have digital, and now we're finding out that the digital formats that worked even 5 years ago won't work again. So what happens there? Like, are we talking about really the ultimate pissing on the past, the ultimate shitting on the past, on history, where it's like all of history can go by the wayside now because that's just too much trouble. We just don't. It's just too much trouble to send it and build it, and then there's people who've worked their entire lives and everything. It's just all nostalgia, fucking bullshit. Oh, come on. We're going to have a history. We're going to have a history of. We're going to have repertory cinemas that, if they rely only on what's converted to digital, even to DCP, you're only going to get Casablanca and fucking just the same old shit all the time. You're not going to get anything. You're not going to be introduced to anything new because they're not going to transfer those movies.
Are we going to get Destroy All Monsters?
Yeah, no, we're not going to get that.
Okay, well, I want to say something, though, about that, though. Remember the Pierce Brosnan movie that we interviewed him for a couple years ago? I forget. Yeah. It was a romantic movie. Yeah. And I went to go see that at our newly refurbished Landmark. And the film kept skipping and freezing.
And then there's that whole thing that happened to Brian De Palma the night that Passion was going to premiere at the New York Film Festival.
I mean, you know what also happens? The film gets caught in the projector and it burns a big hole through it. I mean,
but you know what? You can fix that in 5 minutes. You're an old time film guy. You can fix it in 5-10 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes.
I haven't worked at a theater since they did digital, so that's new to the industry since I was in it.
But I'm saying that there is a fix for that. You know what they had to do with the Passion thing? They had to cancel it because they couldn't. There was no print to fix. They just said,
And it's also, we're still in the infancy of it. But it's happening. It's already happened. So
I just don't see why we can't have both.
You can piss on the past or you can fetishize it. Look, I'm all for film preservation, and a lot of the early films are gone. Like a staggering majority of them are gone, and what's left, it's miraculous that they are still around. So I'm all for preserving every piece of film that exists from the past. I mean, that is respecting the legacy and the history of the art form for me. But I have no problem if everything is made on digital from here on out. I don't feel like I'm losing anything really.
I'm just talking about history. I'm talking about history as far as like movies like Fury or whatever, you know, they can come out and they can go and disappear. I'm fine with that. But
okay, well then I'm on board. I'm on board with you.
But yeah, I mean, it's good. We have a détente here. But I just don't. I just
don't want to see the Blu-ray I own at home, in the theater. That's my big thing.
Please.
I've been seeing that a lot lately. I mean.
Well, that's the natural place for look, if you can't get a DCP of it and you can't get a film print of it because you don't have your projector anymore, and you want to show something that's outside the norm, what the hell are you going to do? What the hell are you going to do but throw in a Blu-ray?
AFI Silver got rid of all their projectionists because one of the guys I worked for, one of my freelancers that I worked for, he was a projection at AFI, and they got all digital projection. He's out of a job. So,
And most places don't have a certified projectionist anyway. They got to have a 17-year-old kid that presses a button. I mean, so
exactly.
They don't have anybody. There's nobody up there in those cavernous rooms anymore.
The big chains like AMC, they used to have a certified projectionist, and he had a region, a territory, just like a district manager of something, and they used to go to all the different locations and check out things. I don't even know if that's necessary anymore. But look, I'm not defending or objecting to whatever Aaron said or what you're saying. But Aaron, by the way, loved Out of Print. He thought it was a terrific movie.
Well, I mean, I love Aaron and I think he's great and everything, but I totally like wanted to call him out on that thing, but I kept my mouth shut because he was a guest on the show. But and actually, it's been something that's been gnawing away at me for. I should have said something. But. But
well, he knows the counter argument, and the old films preserve them. That's all I care about, and
right.
But it's here, man. I mean,
but if they're not going to, but if they're not going to, but here's the problem: if they're not going to send out the old prints, if as Julia's film says, they're going to refuse to send out the prints no matter what or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's shitty.
What? That's fucking shitty. That's to me that is repression. That is a repressing of an art form. That is business. Repressing free speech, if you ask me.
I understand. They have this huge salt mine of the thousands upon thousands of film prints, and they refuse to release them because they only want to shove digital down your throat. When it comes to the older movies, like the Repertory Houses play, I am completely freaking against that repression.
Yes,
and you're right.
Me too.
You're right.
And by the way, if they don't really find any market value in actually keeping those salt mines of
they can just get rid of them.
Around?
Yeah.
What do you think? You think they're just gonna just keep? Oh, we'll just keep throwing money into it. No, they'll fucking get rid of them. They'll flood that whole place with salt water.
You're right. We were joking that there was an episode of there's some episode of a TV show where they were going through a salt mine and they were showing all the old prints of stuff they have, and they actually had prints of the series Friends in a salt mine, because they used to shoot it on film. And
right.
I was saying, yeah, I guess in the Pepper mine they have prints of Joey.
The Pepper mine. I love